Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to another video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today I'm making a face mask out of this pattern here. If you're interested in following along on this pattern or anything close to it, please feel free to check my website, which is linked below. And I'll also include it right here in case you want to check it out. So the first thing I'm doing is cutting out the pattern. I did make a mask following this exact pattern, and these are the 4 pieces. And here's the mask that I did make using it, but I'm doing a modified version. This version of the mask allows for a filter to be added inside of these 2 flaps here. So there's an opening there where you can place something, maybe a coffee filter or something. This was time consuming and I thought a little bit extra, so I'm putting that away and I'm just working with these 2 pieces here to create a modified version. This will be the inner lining and this will be the outer lining. And I'm just going to show you how I'm going to put that together. So if you're interested, please keep watching. So I'm starting with the inner lining here and these 2 pieces. I used a sheet and it's cotton, very breathable material. I'm following the same steps with both pieces. This other piece of material I've had for a while. I have a lot of it, so I plan to make a few masks. I'm just pinning this down and I'm just going to use this to cut the pattern out of the fabric. And I'm going to pin it nice and close so I can get as close as possible to the exact dimension of this. So as you see here, I'm just cutting this down. And when you go to the website, go to shop in the top right corner and then the PDF will be there and it is free. And while you're on the site, please feel free to take a look at some other things. So here I'm just pointing out the notches where you need to cut the 2 top ones and these 2 bottom pieces. You just want to cut a very small little piece of the fabric because that you're going to use that to line up the inner lining with the outer lining. And I'm just showing where those little notches are. And here I'm cutting the same pattern out with the outer lining, but I'm just showing it might be easier if you're going to do this to fold it in half and then cut it out so you don't have to cut the full thing each time. So you also need to cut notches in the middle of each of these pieces. So I'm just cutting the top and the bottom at the center. And then when you open it up, this is what that first piece looks like. And then here I'm just showing how I have both of those inner and outer linings. And then I'm cutting the notches in the chin piece. So this piece will be, again, the chin piece, which will be attached to that mouth guard part. And then you want to cut notches on that one as well in the middle, as well as those ends that I just showed. And here's what you'll be left with. So now you want to sew down and make a what is it called? A dart. So you sew down this little groove here and that creates the dart. And that's one of those sewing technical terms. So here I'm just adding that piece in. And once that is all done, there's going to be a little bit of fabric left over. I'm just going to snip that off as you see here. And then when you open it up and lay it flat, this is how it should look. And when you're sewing, when you go to the next step, you want to make sure this is flat against the rest of the fabric. So this is how it should look on both pieces. So now I'm going to connect the chin piece with the top piece, and I'm working with here the outer fabric. So I'm putting the fabric right sides together and I'm flipping it over and I'm showing up close here how I'm using those little snips that I cut earlier to align the 2 middle pieces. So the snips in the mouth part and the chin part will be lined up, and then I'm going to pin that together. And then I'm going to move to the outside and I'm going to line up those other little snips that I made and I pointed out earlier. If you want to reference back, please rewind the video. And then I'm lining those up and I'm going to pin that there on the right side and the left side. Just adding an extra pin there to make sure it's closed up properly. And speeding this up to show how I'm just going to pin the rest of the way to make sure that I keep everything lined up when I go to the machine. So this is the outer piece all pinned up. And then I'm going to move on to the inside piece. I'll just leave that like that for now, and then I'm just going to go to the sewing machine and sew those lines in. And here I am taking the pins out and just going across the line. You do kind of have to feed it in a little bit and hold it at a slant because this is going to be a little bit of a slanted or grooved piece. And as you see, this is how it looks when it's all done. It does have the curvature to it, which is the way I was forming it when I was feeding it through. And I also did it at the outer lining, and this is what it looks like. So now I'm going to take these two pieces and sew them together, and I'm going to put them right sides together, but I'm just showing how the inside looks here. And then that place where I sewed the dart on each one, make sure that's flat, and then put the right sides together again and make sure the dart is flat on the inside piece as well. And then I'm just going to pin that all together, making sure the centers are straight lined up with each other. And I'm going to put two pins in the middle, and I'll work my way out. So I'll go out to the sides and then fill in the pins inside the spaces. So here I'm going to the outer side, and I'm just lining up the fabric at the end and pinning it, and then the other end and pinning it. And then going back and filling it in, making sure there's no bubbles in the fabric. And then I'm going to put a few in the bottom as well. Just making sure that everything is lined up how it should be. And then I'm just going to sew that top line and the bottom line. I'm going to leave the sides open. And here we are back at the machine. And this is what it looks like once it's sewn together. So now I'm just going to pull this back right side out by tucking the fabric through and pulling it out the other side. It doesn't really have much of a shape, so I'm just stretching it out. And I'm going to iron this nice and flat so that it takes on the shape that I want. And I'm going to emphasize the edges. So this top part and the bottom part is where I want to flatten it out. So off camera I ironed it, and this is how it looks. It's a little more of the shape that it needs to be, but to reinforce that, I'm just going to sew along this top part as well as the bottom, just to make sure that everything stays in place and it looks more like a real piece. And then of course this is washable, so this reinforces everything, so it kind of holds the material together. And this is what the top line looks like, the one that would go across the nose, and this is the bottom underneath the chin. And now I'm going to add the straps. I'm just using this brown ribbon I had left over. I'm showing here how you can use other materials. That was a shoestring, and this is just another piece of material that I cut off the sheet. You can make it as thick or as thin as you like. Just because this was my last piece of ribbon, I'm cutting it in half, and I'm going to use one half on the right and one half on the left. And this is how I'm going to add it in. I'm going to fold this ribbon in half and then find the center of it. And I'm going to place the center as closely as possible to this side of the mask. And here I'm just laying it out, and I'm going to fold over that edge of the mask, and I'm going to sew that ribbon right into that little flap there. And I'm just showing here how that ribbon is tucked in there. And I'm going down that side with a zigzag stitch just to make sure it's covers over as much of the ribbon as I can. And I'm just going to repeat this step on both sides. So this is how it looks. So when I tried this mask on, I didn't like the way the chin felt because it was too baggy, so I'm going to create another dart, and I'm showing here, I'm just going to pinch that piece in the middle where the chin is, and I'm going to just sew right down that little diagonal line, and that's going to be another dart in this mask. And that's just to make sure everything fits properly. It fits okay, but it fits much closer to the face with that extra piece added in. So as you see, this is how it's looking. It has a much better face shape now. From the different angles, and then the bottom. And this is how it looks on the inside. So I'm just gonna go and iron that dart in place. I'm not gonna sew it any more than that. It's not gonna really be necessary. So I'm just ironing it as close as I can and just making sure it stays as flat as it can without having to sew it down. And here's how it looks a little up close inside. And it doesn't bother the chin at all. And then I'm just gonna try it on for you, and this is how everything looks. If anyone is interested in creating this mask, I definitely recommend this modified version because I don't really see a need for that extra piece of filter unless you're going to be in a medical facility or somewhere for an extensive amount of time. But this mask I think works just fine as is, just the 2 layers. It's breathable, it goes all the way to the ear, doesn't bother the ear at all, and covers nicely around the nose, and it goes under the chin very well as well. So I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.